Well, welcome to the Potential Leader Lab, and I am your host, Perry Moffmer. And today on episode 53, we're going to talk about how happiness is not a leading indicator. So a little play on words there. Well, let's dig in. So here's the first thing. If you're listening to this on the day that it drops, it's probably Christmas. So I thought I would just acknowledge that. And I hope you're having a great holiday, and I hope you're having a good time with your family and your friends. And I hope that this is a very happy time of year. I hope that everybody's taking some time off and refueling and replenishing themselves. And it's also going to be a bit paradoxical because I think that we're talking about how to fulfill yourself, how to be, interesting enough, how to be happy. But not the typical pursuit of happiness, but how happiness might ensue from the pursuit of something else. And so hopefully it provides a bit of freedom. And that's really how I look at this. I look at the topic that we're going to talk about and how it kind of frees us up from stress and anxiety and some other things that we suffer from quite frequently. And I hope it gives you pause. I hope it gives you something to just think about over the holidays as we all approach the new year, as it were, and gives us kind of a new lease on behaving differently to achieve a different result for those for ourselves and for those that we care most deeply about. So here we go. What I'd like to challenge you to do is to change the question. And change from the question of what can I gain to how can I contribute? Because I think if we look at gaining through the purpose of greater contribution and not as an end for ourselves, I think it becomes easier. And my whole thought process here as we go through this is to find that never-ending fountain of motivation. And I think we can find it if we shift our focus from us to other people. And we find if we have that kind of those overlapping circles, and we find that overlap from where striving to become the best version of ourselves overlaps with how I show up best for everybody else and provide opportunities for everybody else and make the world a better place for other people. If we find the overlap of those two things, then I think we've found a never-ending source of motivation. I don't think we have to get motivated to do that. I think otherwise, if we're pushing too hard and we keep talking to ourselves, if that voice in our head, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday and today, Andrew Huberman had Dr. Ethan Kross on, and he wrote a book called Chatter, and it's all about the voice in our head. And he was talking about that. And if we have to have that a lot, if we have to have that inner conversation about what we should be doing, could be doing, must be doing, my take on that is that we have to reframe the conversation then. And what I mean is if we're pushing so hard and we have to motivate ourselves every day to think about what we could be doing, should be doing, must be doing, then I think maybe we have to rethink why we're doing it. And it is, as with almost everything in life, it is mostly about intent, not as much about what you're doing, but why you're doing it. And I believe that wholeheartedly about just about everything. In fact, I'll go a little sidetrack here, but I'll go to if you. It's funny. I've been thinking a lot about this. If you wish somebody Merry Christmas nowadays, so if I were to say Merry Christmas to somebody, that could be theoretically offensive to people. Now, why? There's a whole list of reasons why, and it is a little bit myopic, and I'm assuming a lot of things, and I get all that. But here, I'd like you to think about this. I don't care if you say Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever the holiday is. If I'm saying it from my point of view and my intent is to wish you happiness on some occasion. Regardless of if you celebrate that or not, if my intent is just hoping you have a good day or that you have a happy holiday without my implication being you should celebrate the holiday I'm celebrating. It's the right holiday, not the wrong holiday. That has nothing to do with this. If my intent is just I'm wishing you good tidings, then how do we get offended? Why do we get offended? It's because we're looking to be offended, but that in and of itself is a whole different topic and podcast. So I just want to bring that up because I think it's important to understand intent in all things. And we're going to talk a lot about intent in this particular episode because we're talking about why we do things, which we have to understand for ourselves before we can effectively help other people. So the kind of the foundation for this is going to be Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. So, you start out with the baseline of physiological needs, then safety needs, belongingness and love needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. So I'm sure most of us are familiar with that, with the triangle, right? The pyramid that Maslow had. And at the top was the little piece of the top of the pyramid was self-actualization. But again, if I will tell you, that's not what Maslow intended. And that's coming from Maslow. It's not me telling you what Maslow intended. It's Maslow telling you what Maslow intended. And he said later in his life, he said, that was not it at all. The top of that pyramid was actually self-actualization. And here in Maslow's own words is what he said. The goal of identity, self-actualization, seems to be simultaneously an end goal in itself and also a transitional goal, a rite of passage, a step along the path to the transcendence of identity. If our goal is the Eastern one of ego transcendence and obliteration, love that word, of leaving behind self-consciousness and self-observation, then it looks as if the best path to this goal for most people is via achieving self-identity, a strong real self, and via basic need gratification. So what he was saying was, in order to get to where we can obliterate our ego, where we can move past, we can leave behind self-consciousness and self-observation, is through basic need gratification and then through achieving a strong identity. So these things, and he says up here, it's a transitional goal. So self-actualization is a goal, but it's a transitional goal. Because once we have that strong sense of self, we can move beyond it and leave it behind, which is an amazing thing. Now, I'm going to overlay this with a couple different things. So we have the self-transcendence and self-actualization from Maslow. We also have kind of the hedonic and eudaimonic ways of life. Now, hedonism and eudaimonia, right? So hedonism, most people know, is the pursuit of pleasure. Eudaimonia was brought up by Aristotle, and that's to live a good life. And I'm going to touch on what those mean. But I think there's a real overlap if you see, self-actualization and hedonic, the hedonic treadmill, which I'll get to in a minute, and then eudaimonia and self-transcendence. So hedonic is something that pursues pleasure to achieve happiness. So I'm going to do this because doing this makes me happy. Where eudaimonic is something that pursues meaning to achieve happiness in the long term. So again, my way of talking about this is what I want most versus what I want now. Because typically the hedonic part of this, the hedonic part of this is going to be what I want now. The eudaimonic side of this is going to be what do I want most? What do I want long term? Right? And we're talking about a well-lived life. And it contains both pieces of this. This is not, I'm not proposing that you live kind of an ascetic life, that you deny yourself pleasure. That's not the point here. This isn't a binary choice. It's not an either or. It's really, for me, it's like most things, it's kind of a continuum. So it's kind of like, where on the spectrum am I right now? And if you have, you have self-actualization and eudaimonia and what I want most on one side, and then on the other side, call it what you want. You can have hedonic, you can have self-actualization, you can have what I want now. So you have these two ends of a spectrum, and I think that basically our goal would be just to make sure we understand where we're at on the spectrum at any given time, right? We're trying to figure out for today, for right now, for this hour, for this week, for this month, I'm on this side of that spectrum. You can slide up and down the spectrum. I don't believe there's anything inherently wrong about either one. In fact, I think that if we try to make this, the worst thing we can do is try to make this a binary choice. Is try to make this an either or. Because I think that's one of the things that leads us mostly into anxiety and stress and all those things, is when we create these kind of burning platforms for ourselves. Because oftentimes, if we're feeling frustration and anxiety, maybe it's because we're striving for the wrong thing. So even if we achieve it, It doesn't satisfy our hunger or quench our thirst. I mean, how many people have ever thought anything like the following? If I could just get that promotion, if I could just get that raise, if we could just buy that new house, if I could just get that new car, if I could take that one vacation, and on and on and on, right? Well, that's called the hedonic treadmill. That's where we have a desire, then we strive for something, then we get it, then we enjoy it, then we adapt to it, then we desire more, then we strive, the cycle continues. That's why it's called a treadmill, because you never get off of it, because we're trying to get more stuff that's going to fulfill us. And there's this great story. At a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island, Kurt Vonnegut informs his pal Joseph Heller that their host, a hedge fund manager, has made more money in a single day than Heller earned from his wildly popular novel Catch-22 over its whole history. Heller's response, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. And I think that's where the well-being lies. That's where our opportunity for well-being lies. If we want to move in that direction, and that shifts from what fulfills me to what purpose do I serve. And see, again, one leads to the other. These are overlapping, self-actualization and self-transcendence. What fulfills me can also serve my purpose. But I have to make that connection. I have to overtly make that connection. Again, I'll go back to intent. If the reason I'm pursuing become really good at something, or if I'm pursuing something, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it in service of other people. And there's actually research that backs this up, that talks about, there's a collection of stats representing the largest and longest standing series of observations on happiness in the world. The trait most strongly associated with long-term success, long-term increases in life satisfaction, is in fact a persistent commitment to pursuing altruistic goals. That is, the more we focus on compassionate action on helping others, the happier we seem to be in the long run. Now, altruism doesn't just correlate with an increase in happiness, it actually causes it. They did a study, a psychologist named Sonia Luombormirsky had his students perform 5 acts of kindness of their choosing per week over the course of 6 weeks. So 5 acts of kindness per week over the course of 6 weeks. They reported a significant increase in their levels of happiness relative to a control group of students who didn't. So again, doing things for other people actually has a causality to being happy. So now we're going to move beyond pleasure towards meaning. Right? So hedonic, eudaimonic. Now, we have to look on what truly matters beyond personal comfort and then get into well-being. So again, what you want most may not be what you want now. And then this is, you make up your mind on this, you decide. Well, first of all, you have to decide in communication with other people you care about. This isn't just a you decision. This is who you and those you care deeply about. What do you all care about? What's the end goal? What's the vision? What's the mission? But you constantly have to drown out what I'll call the noise from outside. Because everything you hear, most things, not everything, most everything you hear on the radio, marketing, advertisements, TV, social media, all those things are really focused on what you're going to get now, what you want now, not what you want most, because it's consumerism, right? It's the hedonic treadmill. If I get this promotion, seriously, how many people, and I know some of you listening probably have, you got the promotion, you got the title, you got the raise. Did you stop? Are you now completely fulfilled? And it's a new set point. I'm good. I don't strive anymore. I don't need anything else. I'm perfectly happy where I am. Are you Joseph Heller? Do you have enough? And I think this is a lot has to do with social conditioning. I don't actually believe this is nobody. I don't think any of us are kind of born this way. I think where we get this is we're conditioned socially. But you have to get absolutely clear on what moves your needle, not society's expectations, not your parents, not your spouses, not your boss. What moves your needle for you? And that can take a minute to figure out. That can take some time. And it's a moving target, because what moved your needle, or I can only speak to me, what moved my needle 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even 5 years ago doesn't move the needle now. So this is an ongoing, again, explore, experiment, evolve. This is a process, not an event. This is not something we do once and we don't set it and forget it. But because experimentation actually becomes the bridge from hedonic enjoyment to eudaimonic fulfillment, because it involves action towards meaning-based goals, right? These are no longer goals based on external things. They're meaning-based goals. And all of this experimentation comes up with new ways of contributing and leads to a deeper, more resilient sense of well-being. Because now the work that I'm doing, again, back to that never-ending fountain of motivation, the work that I'm doing now, I don't have to get motivated for, because I can't not do it. Again, I'll say it again. What you want to come up with is something you can't not do. That even if you wanted to, it's going to take you more effort to not do it than to do it. That's when you know you're there. When you can't stop doing it. And for not for external rewards or adulation or accolades or money or whatever, but it's just part of who you are. I mean, I have good friends that are in the education field, and it happens mostly with people I see there. Nonprofit, same way. People that have worked many, many years in a nonprofit, they're cause based. They approach like, for instance, the folks I knew in education. This is a way of life for them, and it's not a job. It's not something they do from 8 to 3:30, 5 days a week. They're educators, and they're educators 24/7, 365. That's the frame through which they see the world. Right? So that's what we're kind of talking about, is finding that spot where I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I can't not do it. So what are some practical steps? Well, there are some, and that's what's awesome, right? There are some things we can actually do. We can practice gratitude. Again, it's Christmas. Right? It's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, you got a lot to be grateful for. Now, be genuinely thankful, not just this kind of general gratitude, but be specifically thankful. Now, in order to be genuinely grateful, there's a prerequisite. You have to have some sense of humility, right? Because a truly humble person can easily identify and accept that all of the good things that are happening in their life are blessings for which they should be thankful. Here's what they don't have to do. They don't have to prove to themselves or anyone else that it was their efforts that yielded the reward or outcome. See, we have a challenge with people that are achievers, because I think some of the folks that I work with, that I coached over the years, they have this need to prove to themselves that it was their efforts that yielded the outcome of the reward. Now, I actually believe this is this is kind of a disease in our current landscape, and that this self-made person story is, in my mind, is just bullshit. Because no one, and I will say this as an absolute, and I don't say very many absolutes, absolutely no one did it all on their own. It just doesn't exist. But we create these narratives for ourselves about amazing individuals who did it all by themselves, and all that does is feed the individualistic nature of our society. I mean, you see it everywhere. Pull it up by your bootstraps, the old Protestant work ethic, whatever you want to call it. But we exist in context of other people, and I'm more on that in just a second. And we are at our best when we're working with and for other people. We're absolutely at our best. Why do you think we use the word team so much? Why do you think that every business and organization, team, right? They want to form teams. They want you to be on a team. Why? I mean, think about it. By the way, almost none of those groups are actually teams. And if you look at the very definition of a team, there was a great one by Katzenbach and Smith way back in the day, and it was a small group of people with complementary skill sets who hold themselves mutually accountable for previously agreed upon goals. Right? Now, the first step in that is they have complementary skill sets. They need the first thing about a team is I need the other person to get the work done. Most of the teams I see when we throw around the word team in the workplace are not a team because they don't even need each other. You don't have an accounting team because the person that's doing accounts payable doesn't need anybody else to do their work. They don't need the accounts receivable person to help them. If you're on a team, you cannot complete your task without other people. You can't do it all. Now, the next one of these that we can do is practice meaningful relationships. I was watching a new show on Netflix last night called Man on the Inside. It was Ted Danson. It was a comedy drama-ish thing, and it was about this Ted Danson, who I think is probably in his 70s, who had retired, and he got a job infiltrating a retirement home to search for a missing necklace. And the person that was executive director of the nursing home told him it isn't falling, it isn't disease. Those aren't the things that really impact or can take down our senior citizens. What does it is loneliness. That's the insidious disease, loneliness. So there are tons of studies done that show that people with lots of meaningful relationships live longer and more healthy lives. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go research it. But I wanted to bring up this term. Lisa, my wife, actually brought it to me the other day. She'd heard, I think she was listening to a podcast and said it was very interesting. She went and looked up more research on it and thought it might be something that I would want to talk about, which it is, and I appreciate her bringing it to me. It's the African word Ubuntu, and it's defined as humanity to others. And it's often described as reminding us that I am, quote, I am what I am because of who we all are. And this ties right into the existentialist thought of relatedness, that we only exist in context of other people. I mean, when it comes down to that part of it, we only exist in context of other people. We as a persona only exist in the context of other people. We can't define ourselves. We're defined by other people. We're defined by our impact on other people. And Ubuntu says, I am what I am because of who we all are. We owe it to each other. We can't do it without each other. So another thing we can do is engage in acts of kindness, right? That's easy. Easier said than done, probably. Mindfulness and self-care, which you heard plenty about. Pursue personal growth and learning. Now, again, I'm going to talk about just a little bit about why. For the goal of it and not something else. Or better yet, to help others or bring joy to others. Not always what we do, but why we are doing it that matters. So when we pursue personal growth and learning, let it be of itself. It's funny because the easiest definition for play is the goal. There is no other goal to playing. It's not like a game where you're playing to win. Play is defined as something you do for the sheer joy of the activity. Limit materialistic pursuits is another idea. Now, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of that, but why do you do it? Don't use it as validation. Just understand what you are seeking and why you're seeking it. I'm not saying it's bad to make money. It's bad to have a nice house. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we have to be cognizant of why we're doing it. That's where things get sideways with us. Because if we're doing it, I mean, I actually had somebody I coached several years ago who was just going on and on and on about this position, this title that they wanted, and how it wasn't fair, and they should have this title, and on and on. And I finally asked, I'm like, so what changes for you if you get the title? I mean, really changes. Not just I got the title, but is anybody going to treat you differently? Are you going to treat other people differently? Is it going to make some material difference in the way you come across to people? I mean, what will really change if you get the title? And they actually thought about it for, 20, 30 seconds, just kind of sat there, and give them credit. They said, nothing. I said, okay, I was just curious, right? But he was consumed with the title. Now, the last practical example is savoring. Practice savoring and mindful enjoyment. This is interesting. So savory is defined as the capacity to attend to, appreciate, and enhance the positive experience in your life. I'll give you an example. There's something, I don't know if you guys know about this. My wife and I actually talk about it all the time. There's something called a 3-bite rule. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but here it is. So it actually stems from neuroscience, which shows us that if we, and I heard about this years ago from a speaker that I listened to, and then Lisa brought it up again because of the work she does around the health area. But let's say you're eating a dessert. Neuroscience shows us that the only bites we actually taste are the first, the second, and the last. So the first one, we're fully engaged. It tastes wonderful. It's so great. It's so decadent, all those things. The second one, we taste less than. And then after that, we don't get any residual value from any bites after that. So just try it out. 3-bite rule, right? So what I'm saying is that's savoring. Savoring is savoring that first bite or savoring the second bite and then thinking, do I need another bite? And all that is being fully present. If you're walking in nature, right? If you're walking in a park, savoring is just being open to all of the stimulus that's there. And what's funny about it, this is the really cool thing. When you say, the more you savor, the more time slows down. The more time we get, because you're in that moment and things just kind of slow down and go away. Because if I'm fully present in whatever I'm doing, it could be a conversation. I could savor a conversation. I could savor a meal. I could savor a walk in the park. You can savor anything. But if you're fully present and you open up all of your senses to it, it slows things down, right? And it puts us kind of in a more eudaimonic state of mind. Because we find that, especially when I'm using examples about being out in nature, we find that we're part of something. It's really interesting because and just a little side note, we imagine that all of our problems are so immense. Again, I love shifting away from us to other people, and I love the ego obliteration that we talked about earlier. But we get so consumed with our problems and how horrible our problems are, how meaningful our problems are, how insurmountable our challenges are. If you, along with savoring, awe, AWE, is a wonderful thing, right? And it's an amazing thing because if you go stand in front of some natural thing, say a Grand Canyon, and you feel awe, and what that means is you feel small, right? Because if you think of yourself in terms of the Grand Canyon or the cosmos or a 300-foot sequoia tree or anything, right? And you truly think about how insignificant you are, then by default, all of your problems become insignificant as well. So sometimes it's just about reminding ourselves about our place in the universe. So now we've talked about exploration. We're doing a little experimentation that we just talked about, some real life stuff. Now, if we can integrate these experiences for fulfillment. And again, I'll go back to what you want most is normally linked to and for other people. And this is a process. Again, it's not a one and done. It's not one shot and we don't get another shot at it. This is a relentless journey towards not just your personal goals, but your personal goals that end up uplifting other people, right? That's the sweet spot. If what I'm relentlessly pursuing is a benefit to other people, I'll never get tired. It's a unified sense of purpose that blends my hedonic joy with eudaimonic meaning. I do feel good doing it, but I'm doing something for other people is why I feel good. Because science, I guess. Now, again, so how does this translate to the workplace? right? So leading and basically collective well-being. So you have to both, right? I mean, let's be honest. We've all heard that acronym WIFM, right? The most listened to radio station in the world, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So that's a hedonic part of it. So as a leader, you're trying to connect both those things. It's so interesting because if you go back to Dan Pink's book, Drive, he talks about the three things that he did all this research in these three things: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. He said those three things, if we create an environment where we have mastery, autonomy, and purpose, then there's motivation. Well, purpose. And the definition is I connect to something bigger than myself. Again, self-transcendence. I've moved beyond myself in service. I've connected to something I believe in, and my accomplishments are not just about me or my department or my company or the money we're making. It's about something greater than that. And that's really important. So if we create an environment where that exists, like if we're connecting those dots for people, wherever you are, I don't care if it's with your family, with your community, with your place of worship. I don't care where you are with any group of people. If you connect those dots for people, then great things happen. Because now not only do you have an everlasting source of motivation, but so do they. And that's not easy to come by. Because time after time after time, I hear about people talking about motivation, their own motivation, other people's motivation. How do I motivate people? Well, I think the challenge is if we go back, it's the framework. So if I hear an organization talking about motivation is not the issue. The issue is we haven't created anything where people feel motivated, because we can't make people be motivated. Money doesn't motivate. We do all this carrot and sticking, right? We do all of these programs, we do all these systems, all these plans, everything, bonuses and compensation and perks and all these things to try to motivate people, when in fact the easiest way to do this is connect them to a purpose. Connect ourselves and other people to something larger than ourselves. Have meaning. Because again, happiness, to go back and go full circle, happiness ensues from the pursuit of something meaningful. It's actually a byproduct. And it doesn't mean that you always feel good. This is interesting, right? My own opinion. Of course, all this is my own opinion, so take it or leave it, right? But I don't think happiness equates to feeling good. This is me personally. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this recently. Is that I believe that happiness is a sense of fulfillment, that you're leading a meaningful life. Not that I feel good, that I'm satiated both emotionally and psychologically and financially and all those things. That's comfort. And I actually believe that eudaimonia is kind of at odds with comfort, because I find myself mostly in discomfort. And I'm beginning to understand it's not a bad thing, because discomfort moves us. And so I think happiness is awesome. I just don't think we should pursue happiness, because I think just like revenue, if a company just pursues revenue, we might make all kinds of really not so great decisions, if that's the case. So we have to have something of meaning. We have to have something that keeps us on track. What do we want most? And again, we have to revisit that from time to time. We just want to make sure leaders create environments that reward both personal satisfaction and purpose-driven contribution. We can connect those two things. Both are good as long as they're connected. And you got to connect your why for the pursuit, so it's not simply just the pursuit of more. I guess that's the message here. Happiness is not the pursuit of more. It's not the hedonic treadmill. And you can get off the hedonic treadmill if you want to. And boy, does it take work. And it takes constant effort, because everything you hear, most things that you read, all of the things, all the messages that are sent to you, all of the noise, I call it, all of that noise wants you on the hedonic treadmill, needs you on the hedonic treadmill. But you choose. That is the most awesome thing. You are always at the moment of choice. So I would invite you to think about how this impacts you and those you care deeply about, and what other choices can you make? What might be done differently? Not better, not worse, just differently. And this all comes from reframing, right? We're just reframing the way we look at things. That's it. We're not changing anything. I hate that word anyway, but we're really not. We're simply looking at things from another perspective. And it's funny because when we change the way we see the world changes. Because we don't believe things because they're true because we believe them. So what else could be true for you? Well, that's it for today's exploration. Now it's up to you. Will you take action? If today's session resonated, subscribe, rate, share to build a community that amplifies your impact. Create your own adventure. And until next time, remember, make your choices or your choices will make you.